All right. Hey, everybody. If you're watching, can you let me know you can see us? If I see I know we've got Anna and Adam in the chat. I'm not sure who else is here. If you could let us know you see us and everything's working well. We're here with Link Moser for today's GoWP webinar on growth by acquisition. So I don't see anyone saying they see us yet. Oh, there we go. Adam sees us, but I have a South African accent. Interesting. I don't know where that came from. Huh. I'll have to check into that. So weird. Very cool. And I believe we are live on Facebook also. So if you're watching on Facebook, let us know. Say hi. Let us know where you're watching from. Be great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. And I will go ahead and get started so we can get this show on the road. Thanks for joining us in Crowdcast again this week. So I think we've ironed out most of the kinks we experienced last week. So thank you to all of you who came back after that experience. But I think we're set up for a smooth ride today. So let's get started. I am Emily from GoWP, and welcome to today's webinar, Growth by Acquisition, How to Source Opportunities and What to Do When You Find Them, with Link Moser, who we've got on the screen here. Really quick, I just want to say a couple of words about GoWP in case anyone watching isn't familiar with us. At GoWP, we create happiness for digital agencies and help them to become more profitable. So whether you're looking to grow your team with a developer, copywriter, designer, project manager, or you're interested in outsourcing services so you can focus on growth, things like maintenance, content edits, case studies, blogging, all sorts of things. We're here to help, and we've got you covered. So we'd love to have that conversation. If you're interested in finding out how you can partner with GoWP to grow your agency, reach out to me, Emily at GoWP. You can find me in the Niche Agency Owners Facebook group. You can reach out to us on our chat bot on the website, GoWP.com, pretty much anywhere. We're pretty easy to find, so we're happy to have that conversation. Apart from that, we've also built an active community of more than 1,600 agency owners where we hold regular group calls, webinars like today, and mastermind sessions. So we do our Friday happiness hour calls, which are so fantastic. Link has been on them a couple of times. We love having him there. And it's a great conversation with your peers, other agency owners, mentors, people who have been through what you're going through, and people who haven't been through what you've been through and need your advice. So it's a little bit of give and take there. It's a great call every Friday at 3 p.m. in the GoWP Niche Agency Owners Facebook group. And I'll share the link to that if you're not a member yet. We are live streaming in that Facebook group right now. So you can check out the recording there or here on Crowdcast. It'll be all over. So we'll have all the links available and everything. And if you're here on Crowdcast, you'll get the email after this with all of the important stuff you need to find out afterwards. So regarding the webinar, we've got the chat up. You guys have all found it. I see you. We've got folks in the Philippines here. Where else are people watching in from? So if you're here in Crowdcast, let us know. North Carolina, fantastic. So we've got people from all over. That's amazing. So let's go ahead and get started. So today's webinar is with Link Moser. Link Moser is the owner of Windhill Design, a WordPress development and SEO firm in New England. He's completed multiple acquisitions as a way to grow his company, and he's passionate about helping others reduce the friction when it comes to micro mergers and acquisitions. He can be contacted at link@windhill.com, and we'll share all those links after, or windhill.com. www.windhill.com. You can find them there also. So Link, good to see you, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Emily. I've been looking forward to this, and thank you for everyone that is giving up a little bit of your day or evening, depending on where you're at, to join us. This is a fun topic for me, and one I'm excited to share, and I hope that everyone can feel comfortable to participate, ask questions. I am watching the chat. I'm a little new. I told Emily to the crowd, whatever platform here, so I'm going to try not to break anything or disappear on you, so I'll watch chat. But really, I love an engaging webinar, so this is, ask questions. They're all welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Feel free to share your screen, Link, and I'll jump in with anyone who has questions. So if you have questions, if you have comments, you can put them in the chat. There's also the ask a question option down at the bottom there. So if you're watching and you have a question, you can put it in there or the chat. Either way, we'll get to it. And Link, I'll bring those over to you so you don't have to stress about.
Okay, I think I can see it. So I'll kind of keep an eye on it. PowerPoint, I think, is sharing here.
Yep, it looks good.
All right, good. I can't make it go in the full mode and hide the ribbon. Then it wants to take up both my screens. So we will go with this. So
It works.
um,
Looks great.
it'll work. It'll work. And as I was telling Emily, I'm not heavy dependent on the slides. So this is all going to be mostly just me talking and you guys asking questions. And please post the questions, ask them away, and we'll try to get to them. So yeah, awesome to be here. Let me tell you guys a little about my history in a nutshell and what I've learned. And I have been in web design and this wonderful world of digital marketing almost from the beginning. I started in 1996. I was 20 years old, pre-Amazon. I had to get in my car and drive to the bookstore so I could teach myself HTML. I was made plenty of mistakes along the way. Otherwise, I'd probably be retired now and independently wealthy. So I didn't figure that all out. But I did learn to do hosting early on, back in the day when it was pre-cPanel, very messy. But I didn't know it then. But recurring revenue was my friend, and I'm glad I did that versus the path of just project-based work. So I did do a few things right. Probably should have bought a few extra domains there that I could have then sold off, but they were $100 a whack then at a year, and that was a lot of money for me at 20 years old. And let me just advance my slides here. So my story keeps up with what I'm talking about. And as Emily said, I do live in New England. I'm in New Hampshire, about an hour and a half north of Boston. I have born and raised here in New Hampshire, married, 5 kids, 2 dogs. I'm not counting my kids' chickens and other creatures and things. I started, as I said, this business in 96 and did not really think about acquisitions at all. I mean, obviously it was brand new. The internet was new. Growth for me, for my needs at the time, were pretty minimal, and organic and referral was more than enough. But as the internet grew, as more and more people got into doing web design, as CMSs like Joomla and WordPress started becoming more prevalent, and hosting companies started, giving these web builder tools. You could build a website for free in your underwear at night, came on the scene. Organic traffic and referral all sort of started to dry up a little, and I have never been good at sales. That's just not something I have quite figured out yet. I'm still open to it, but I struggled a little with how to bring more business in. And so probably right around 2012, one of my friendly local competitors was, I heard through the grapevine, they just, changed hands, moved all their business over to another company here in the area. And I was sort of remiss, wishing I had had a chance to be at the table. They didn't reach out to me and say, hey, Link, we're changing gears in our life. It was a husband and wife team. We need a home for our client base. And it was just 30 minutes from my house, and it would have been a perfect fit, I think, but they probably didn't know that I was interested or would have been open to that. So, because I had never thought to tell them. So after that, I became a lot more aware of needing to get my name out there. And I started sending letters, and I still send letters. That's kind of my primary outreach. Good old-fashioned letter, hand signed with a stamp on it. It's a pain in the butt to crank those out and very hard to scale, but I find that it still works. So 2014, my first acquisition came about. It was another local firm, husband and wife team. Unfortunately, the husband had became terminally ill, passed away. He had the technical knowledge, the wife did not. So she had all these clients that she was not sure what to do with, and had hung on to my letter in the past, and the timing was right. Timing is the big key to these things, and reached out and said, hey, I need to find a home. I love the saying "find a home," because it really has, for me, to be about me providing them with value versus both ways. So we took over the accounts. That one was a 100% earnout. If I recall correctly, it was I will write you a check for 50% of the gross revenue from the clients you provided for the next 12 months. And so I had no capital risk there. We took the clients over, sent those checks out monthly or quarterly or whatever it was. Probably it was monthly. And again, I'd like to think that was a win-win. So then from there on, I started sending my letters out more, and probably 2017, I became much more purposeful about it. So, that's where I got the more recent acquisitional experience. And as I wrote this slide up here, it happened in pretty fast succession. And then why, I'm not honestly sure, because it was the same letters going out to the same types of companies, similar conversations, and they just sort of stacked up. The first one in May of 2017 was another New Hampshire-based firm. This individual, just to give you guys a little sense of the type of company that you might talk to, this was a one-person show. It was a sort of a second career for him, and I think he probably just got into doing web design and maintenance, and then naturally, as it does for many, the accounts sort of came in. But his wife was retiring. They wanted to travel. They had a home out in Arizona, and he had already tried to form a relationship with another New Hampshire-based company, and as they got into their conversations, it didn't quite go the way he wanted it. They didn't like their values or something. So he was already actively searching for a home for his clients when he received my letter. So again, timing, super, in that case, perfect timing. Since we were local, this was pre-pandemic, went to a restaurant, met up, built some rapport, chatted, which, whether it's virtual or in person, I think is an important part of this, because they're sizing you up, you're sizing them up. It was a great fit. About 35 clients, give or take. They were on Joomla. I had more knowledge of WordPress, but okay, we'll take the accounts. Hosting, maintenance, some maintenance plans in there, care plans, a good little mix. I believe I only put down like $4,000 on that, and it probably brought maybe 20 to 30,000 in profit. So again, for me, sort of starting out nice and small, and I won't presume to know where everyone's at in their business, but these are all very small little deals, which have a lot of great lessons learned in them before you start doing bigger ones. And that worked out great. That was probably one of the best ones. And I'm still, consider that guy a great friend and a resource. He's very helpful after the transaction. The next one was, and I'll go through these kind of quickly so I don't chew up too much time on them. The third one was a spin out. That was a company in Connecticut who was going in a different direction with their business. So he wasn't leaving the industry, but he had accounts that did not fit the industry or the vertical he was going after. So those were, again, hosting and maintenance was kind of the thing, as well as design, that was a fit for me. The third one was, the fourth one here in December, that was hosting only. That was a designer who had a poor experience hosting, didn't like the technical side of it, was looking to move the hosting out. And then the one in January was, again, a mix of hosting, maintenance, and design clients. And the February one was, again, WordPress hosting from a larger firm, again, going on bigger projects, had some smaller accounts, wasn't in their best interest, or just was too much of a distraction for them. So, it's a little, you find these opportunities in different places. And if you're sending those letters out or your email outreach, you're going to have these conversations. And that's what I kind of liked about it, was that you didn't quite know where it went. So maybe somebody wasn't selling their whole business, but there was some opportunity to get to know each other and share services, joint ventures, all kinds of things that could come about from these conversations. So, why acquire, right? I mean, I think most of us probably can answer that pretty quickly. For me, it was, I stunk at sales, and it was a way for me to grow my business, buying cash flow in a much larger, instead of one client at a time, I could pick up, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 accounts, bring those in, and then, especially if there was recurring revenue, have that in place. On a larger scale, most of what I was acquiring was just client lists, so it wasn't coming with staff and talent, but that certainly is a value that can come when you're looking at being bigger agencies. The learning curve around growth, I think there's less risk in buying existing businesses than there is, if you're in that startup equation of, and that's sort of like organic growth is going to be a little slower way to go. Processes and procedures, by talking to different companies and agencies over the years, you're always under a non-disclosure agreement, but still you're exposed to learning about how different businesses work, because obviously people are opening up the books and things, and in our industry, unlike so many other industries, I think there's such a wide variation of how we all run our businesses. It's really neat that you can have employees remote, you can have them in house. I mean, the margins are all over, services are all different. It's all very different. You can so you can pick up procedures and processes and new tools through an acquisition. You can expand your geographical reach through an acquisition by perhaps buying a satellite office in a new market. You can enter a new vertical with immediate credibility and case studies and clients that speak to that. So that's an upside. And new service offerings as well. If you're acquiring a firm that's got a real good process and procedure around SEO, and you'd predominantly been more of a branding and design side, you now have those services that you can cross market to your existing clients without you necessarily having to pick up those skills and cut your teeth on all of that. So those are certainly some of those benefits. So where do you find companies to buy? Two real main ways of finding companies to buy is broker deals, or companies and firms represented by an intermediary, or proprietary deal flow. That's the sending out letters, cold emails, networking groups, all these different ways where you're actively looking to find people without an intermediary. Pros and cons to both. Certainly the broker deals are going to find you people who are probably further along in the process of selling, probably mentally and prepared. I have a lot of conversations with agency owners who receive a letter and are curious, but probably aren't quite ready yet to have that conversation. They haven't really had a conversation around valuations. So there's educating that I need to do. They may, typically don't always agree with valuations. And so the timing may not be right for them, and they may go back to continuing to run their business. So there's certainly more time in that. The ones I have all acquired have to date been without a broker or intermediary, just because, a spin-off is an example of one that a broker would not be representing. So if you are doing anything short of a full acquisition of a company, sending your letters out is going to be able to bear some of these other types of opportunities that might not show up on these brokerage sites. BizBuySell is a very popular site for all types of companies for sale, and they quite often have agencies, and it's a great place to look and see and watch what's out there. You can at least see what people are asking. It'll tell you what the cash flow is, so you get a sense of what things sell for, or at least what they're asking for it. And our industry is a very popular one amongst many buyers for all the reasons we like doing this and being here. So that initial screening process, this is something that I've kind of refined myself over time, because I'm trying to feel out, is it a good fit? Is it something I'm interested in? This is going to be different for everyone, depending on what it is you're looking for. If you kind of go back to that previous slide of why consider growth by acquisition, everyone's going to answer that a little bit differently. So your screening process is going to speak to why is it you're doing this? What are you looking to achieve? Very much related to your goals around cash flow growth, your service offerings. Are you looking to take on more of what you do? Are you looking to get complementary services? And as well as size, right? Budget, all those factors go into this equation. How much capital do you have? Do you want to be borrowing money for this? Is this something, I have a little, not trepidation, but I'm not sure how much larger a company than myself I want to be taking on. And then, because there's more money on the table there. And then do you merge that in, or do you run it separately? And now you've got two businesses, because the bigger they get, the more of a brand that there can be. And it may not be a smart move to just fold all that into your existing brand. So now you're running two businesses, totally feasible to do, but duplicate costs and services. So all these things to think about. So as you're looking at clients, all things equal, Client concentration is something to look at. Very often I will see client concentration, usually around revenue. So a couple of those big fish that show up on a client list that sort of stay in that mix. That's a little risky for a buyer to look at because you're wondering, well, what happens if that big client leaves when I take over? The ratio between the recurring and project-based revenue is something I absolutely look at. And you will find many people want to call recurring and repeat revenue the same thing. They're not. Contractually recurring revenue. I've learned the hard way that services like maintenance, care plans, hosting, domain management, these sort of utilitarian services are far more stable and sticky post-acquisition than design, creative, project-based work. SEO retainers, those kind of things may be sort of in the middle, depending on how they're being delivered. But the huge factor is how intertwined is that owner into this business. I mean, for many of these small shops, like myself, and like I'm sure many of you, we're kind of the face of our business, for better or for worse. People tend to, may hire us because of who we are and how our rapport is with them. And someone new comes in, think of it like, if you're loyal to whoever cut your hair, or if you're loyal to, a financial planner, anyone else in a professional services role that has a personal relationship, if they just all of a sudden were gone one day and someone else came in, how would you feel, and how would that look, and would you want to continue to work with that person? Those are a lot of factors that go into that, I think, make our stuff riskier, I think. And having been through it on the other side of buying these and watching the clients just go right back out the door is a stinky, stinky feeling. So these are all things sort of that every business has got a value. It's just trying to mitigate and manage that, and the risk is part of that screening process. And I don't think I go out at this point very open-minded. And I get my haircuts at home too, by the way. I'm watching the chat, so no more haircuts for me. So my wife did it and decided she did a great job at it. So I'm saving my 20 some odd bucks a month post COVID here. So again, going on what you want, that's an important thing to the screening process. What to look for, this sort of is what I touched on. One of the biggest things I want to look for is that owner. What are they looking to do next? Why am I having this conversation with them, and why now? Don't beat over this question real quick and then get excited by the profit and loss statements, because this is the one that's going to really make or break. They need to have an answer there that it's got some conviction behind it. Our industry, compared to many others, is a still fairly young industry. So it's not as often you're going to run into someone who is at that proverbial retirement age, 70s, late 60s, 80s, doing this as you would with an older industry. I think of like plumbers, home services. These are industries where they're also more physically demanding, but they are older industries. So, if someone was 40 years old when they got started doing this 20 years ago when I started, then yeah, they're going to be at that point of late 50s, early 60s, starting to at least think about, I'm not going to live forever. I may not want to do this forever. Those are good answers to have. But if you're talking to someone who is, not at the typical retirement age, why? Many of them will respond to your outreach for financial reasons, thinking, hey, I hadn't thought of selling, but here I got this letter. I'm curious, would love to know what you're thinking. Or they'll just say, what are you offering me? Which is really hard to do because you don't know what they have. But they're thinking, if my business is only worth $500,000, but you want to offer me $2 million, yeah, I'll probably let it go. Those aren't very productive conversations, but that's the thought process that's coming around. I much more enjoy I'm retiring, I'm sick of this, I'm burned out by it, I have an opportunity to do something else I'm really excited about, and I'd like to find a good home for my clients. If that's truly what they're saying and that's truly what they mean, those are productive conversations that could lead to, hey, I'd love to know more about what you have. I'm interested. This is something I'd like to help you out with. I'd like to give you, a fair valuation for it. Let's talk more. I don't want to be the one paying the most. Any of you guys are welcome to go at that and outbid me, because I just, I'm not a deep pockets private equity fund here just with money slushing all over the place. I've got to unload. I've got to be smart about it. I'd like to live to see the next day and not, regret the ones that I had bought. There are horror stories in many of those, but because I did it, and we'll talk about this on a slide, financial way to cover myself money wise, I didn't lose the farm there. You remember that first slide with all those 5 little kids in there? Some of them, probably still want to eat, and some of them may even want to seek higher education and want clothes and shoes. So I can't spend it all on a crazy overvalued web company, where at the end of the day, our assets can all walk right out the door. There's no equipment. My crummy computer here that just crashed on me before the webinar is really not going to be worth a ton of money to anybody. So it's really important that we understand the seller's motivations. In the case of a spin out, obviously they're not leaving the industry, and so many of the clients may still be local to them and may go back to them. So these are all things to think about and ask about. I don't think there's such a thing as a bad company. It's just finding the value and mitigating that risk accordingly. That's kind of the tricky part. So when you find some companies that you have an interest in, you think this might be a match. I like this, I like the person. There's some good reasoning. Harder to tease some of that out when there's a broker in the middle, unless you can talk to it. So that's another reason I like doing my own outreach, because I can talk directly to that seller. If there's a broker in the middle, some of them will run interference and make it harder. In my opinion, the good ones will get out of the way and let you have those conversations. But when you get to that point, you're starting to think about, how can I structure an offer? Every agency owner, any business owner selling, would love to have just one big cash offer at the table. I've never done that. I don't think that's fair to you as a buyer. I think that the best deal is where everybody has a little bit of risk in the mix and it's sort of spread out. Now that risk is going to shift depending on who's got the upper hand, I guess, in the negotiation and the risk of the business. So my transactions have all been probably like the middle one down there at the bottom. So some down payment, an earn out on the balance. I've done that one. And some of them in all earnouts, when it's just a spin out or taking over a couple, if you're taking over 20, 30 accounts from a bigger firm, there's not a lot. That's not really worth a ton. It's great fit for you, and I'll do those all day long, but it's not like you're buying a business. So when the moment you're taking just a piece of it, the rest of the business is still sitting over here. So you're often not getting any process, employees, brand, whether that had value or not, you're not getting it. And so you're just getting a little piece of it. And so to me, that's really an earnout's the easiest way to just do that. I will give you a rev share of a percentage for a fixed amount of time, game over. And again, I'll do those all day long, because it's like, here, Link, here's 20 accounts. Pay me for these out of future revenue. Okay, that's a no-brainer. You will find those opportunities with full-on companies. It just, it's not fair to a seller, really, because you need to be putting some money on the table, and it needs to be worth their while. Because I've had people tell me this, that, geez, I didn't realize this is what it's worth. I might as well just keep running it, or I'll run it into the ground and just let it, naturally die. And unfortunately, they're probably right. That will yield more money for them in the long run, because they have to pay taxes on whatever value they sell this for. So be careful. If you grind someone too hard, they're going to come to the real, if they're smart enough, they're going to figure out, well, this is not really a very good deal for me. I could just let this go on autopilot and just crater down. So there's got to be enough upside for them financially. Even if their motivation isn't purely financial, right? There's still, money is part of this equation. So I think the best types of acquisitions are going to be the ones where you've got a mix of that, right? They're going to get some money at closing. They're going to be on the hook for some of that going out over time. And I do that not just because of money, but because I want to keep them engaged enough to help me transition this thing. And that's the biggest piece to get right in all these is how are you going to transition this working together with that owner? You've got definitely client relationships to transition. You might have team members depending on the size of the agency. What is that culture? Certainly pre-COVID and even still, we have plenty of companies out there where people are coming into the office, either hybrid, remote, all in, some out. But there's a culture there of how the owner's current leadership style is. How are you going to, assimilate yourself into that? Are you physically going to be going in hour for hour just like them? If you're local, if you're not local, how's that going to work? Are you going to tell everybody they're going to go remote now? And so these are things to think about because clients can leave just a drop of a hat unless there's contractual obligations, and same with team members. And I say team members meaning W-2 and independent contractors, because very often there's a mix or some or both. Assets, these are easier to transfer the hard goods like server accounts, software subscriptions, domains. That stuff's pretty straightforward, but you still should have a plan for that because you're going to be sitting there at the proverbial coffee table, either in person or remotely, with some money changing hands, and you want something coming back. I have done domain pushes right in a Panera. The check here's my down payment check. I am watching you push domains to my Enome account, and I'm confirming that because I want something here by the time I'm giving you this check, and they want something too, right? Before they're just going to give you the keys to all their servers and hope that there's that's sort of a unnerving feeling, right? Some of these I wrote checks, again for me as large as $25,000-$30,000 to a person I only talked to for a few weeks, and you think you've got it all tied down in writing, but you're still always wondering, really, is this going to work? And it did, but and then the owner's role post closing. Some owners will tell you that they'd like to stay on. They will tell you that they'd like to sell you their company, and you keep paying them to work for a little while longer. Bigger companies, that works out because there's enough money coming in to do that, but smaller ones, there just isn't usually enough meat in the bone to do that. And my personal feeling is that they're selling for a reason. Hopefully that's to move on. I want to help them move on. I want them to be involved just enough to transition the clients, but I'd like to get them out the door because those clients need to start being used to contacting you and your team for support and needs. And you're starting on ground one with a little bit of a referral from that exiting owner, but you still have to earn your trust and you've got to earn the relationship. And you can't really do that if they're still in the fold having FaceTime with them. And so I'd be a little nervous about having someone linger in that role. I've not done it. With a bigger company with enough cash flow and employee agreements, you could probably, it works. AccuHires, it's called informally. But, I want to know what they're doing. And then the conversation around non-competes is part of this as well. I really would like if they're exiting the industry to exit it. Because I've never had someone come back and try to poach clients, but it certainly can happen. And I found out that even if you have things in writing, it's going to cost you time and money to pursue that legally, to enforce that. And some people aren't motivated by money. I have had people kind of default on their transition agreement. And even though that meant they were getting less money from the earnout, that wasn't enough to motivate them. So you kind of had to work through that and be prepared for that. And, the what ifs, because everything leading up to the date of transition or sale, if you will, sounds great. Everybody is just thinking, this is awesome, Link. I'm going to help you find new business and we're going to just, rock this. And then after that, sometimes they just check out mentally. It's like a light switch goes off and they have moved on. Many times they moved on by the time you're having these conversations. And that's something to be mindful of is you'll see in the financials, things kind of going down, which is typical when we take our foot off the gas. I've been distracted throughout my agency and shifted my focus into other projects and watched things go down. So that happens, right? Either you're growing or you're dying, someone once told me. So if that's where they're at, you're getting them perhaps the right time to have this conversation, but keep in mind that some clients may have already started their migration one foot out the door. And the moment that person they were sort of loyal to is out and you're in, they have no loyalty to you. The ones that are hanging around may give you a chance, and hopefully you can earn on that and build on that. But some of them may have just, that may be the shoe that it takes to be, you know what, I'm going to go with someone else, or it's great jumping off of them. So again, an earnout really will protect you against that, financially anyway. So you're taking all of this knowledge, all of the stuff you've learned, where you want to be at terms, and you're working toward a letter of intent, it's called. And this is nothing more than a few pages outlining the high level points of what you're offering somebody. You can find templates of these online free. You can write one from scratch. I probably wrote mine from scratch. It was not anything complex. They're not binding, but it's like, here's what I want to buy from you. Here's what I'm offering. Here's my terms. Here's how this is going to shape up. Here's your non-compete. And these are all high level points. Here's about when we close on it. Here's what I want from you from a transition standpoint. For any work beyond that, here's how I'd compensate you for that if it was, beyond that. And at this point, I've not seen a client list, but I've got a sense that they've got X number of clients, and this is how we're going to do that. And it's really just a high level agreement. If they're in agreement on it, you move forward. If it was a broker deal, this takes it sort of off the market, means they're kind of going steady with you and just having this conversation exclusively. They can't really entertain another buyer. And then it's moving toward a purchase and sales agreement where you are now, between these 2 points, you're doing your deeper due diligence of, hey, I'd like to look under the hood a little more on some of these accounts. I'd like to just, dig deeper so that you've got enough comfort. You don't need to go that deep. Maybe looking at client lists and seeing who are the clients, what are some of the sites, but you wouldn't get to that stage prior to an LOI in this case. So. And at that point, purchase and sale, you're off to the races, and if you're getting that far, you commence on the deal, and you have now acquired whatever it is you just bought, and a whole bunch of potentially things you didn't know. There's always going to be some surprises, but I still actively send out letters, and I still think this is a great way to grow. Maybe not exclusively a way to grow, but sometimes these opportunities will naturally just happen, and you just need to get your feelers out there. Just like what I said earlier about some local firms, there's still a lot of value in I think local in our space. And so if a local person is thinking about changing gears, you might want to just at least have the opportunity to have the conversation. It doesn't mean you have to do this. It doesn't mean you have to, you're not on the hook, you're not obligated, but you aren't going to win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. And if someone doesn't know you might be interested, they might approach you. They might go around locally and shop that out. But sometimes they're afraid to do that for fear of someone blindly saying, "Oh, I heard you're thinking of selling because you came to me, and now I'll go to your client list and hey, guess what?" So there's certainly a level of confidentiality that has to be managed there. So if they're getting your letter, and I find that less of an issue when you're outside your home turf, if you're kind of geographically focused. But it's happening, it's out there. I mean, none of us can take our business to the grave here. So either we're going to decide on our terms when to transition out of it, or life will do that for us. So, and this is not a webinar around succession planning, or from the selling perspective, but know that everybody else out there has to face this at some way or another. So the ones that are facing age or thinking about that, or just having an option of doing it, are going to need to think about this and may already be thinking about it, and you might be an option for them. And again, if nothing else, who knows what comes from it conversation wise. So I have been watching some questions here, but would love to have more. Emily, any questions or thoughts? I kind of just buzzed through that.
Absolutely. That was such a great presentation, Link. It was really interesting. I had a lot of thoughts that came up, and I'd like to also invite everyone who's watching to get your questions in. You can put them right in the chat, or you can go to the ask a question feature down at the bottom there if you want to put it in there. Either way, it's fine. We'll see it. But one question I had for you, Link, is, you focused on finding out what it is the owner intends to do after they sell, right? What is it? What are some specific things you look for in that conversation? Certain red flags or certain, good signals? What is it that you're kind of listening for then?
Great question. And I'm trying to feel out sincerity, and because there's many different ways to ask that question. And the best way to ask it is from multiple angles over time, not just what are you going to do next? Or what would you do if you don't sell your business? Or what's the next chapter for you? Or what does life look like? Or where do you want to end up through this conversation? And you can ask that a dozen different ways, and you should circle back to it, I think, because you're also asking questions about the business, but you're asking questions about them. So you could circle back to that after a few more questions and say the initial conversation, but you also may want to circle back to it in your follow-up conversations. And you're looking for consistency in that answer. You're looking for them to be, I have bought a sailboat and I have been wanting to sail around the world, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm leaving, on December 1st, and I'm going west. You're looking for something definitive, whatever that is. So, I've always wanted to open a coffee shop, and I now have an opportunity. I got a spot picked out. I'm really excited about it, versus something that's more vague that, I'm just, ready for a change, or, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll figure something out. It doesn't mean that you still shouldn't pursue it, but they're going to be more, they're going to push harder back when it comes to value, I think, because they maybe haven't, most of us want to have our hand on the next branch before we let go of the one we're hanging on to now. And if they haven't been clear about that, you may also want to ask who else might be deciding this conversation. Obviously, if there's partners, that's part of it, but it could be, a spouse, that has in the behind the scenes is going to be part of whatever that next phase is, if they're both going on that sailboat or whatnot. So I'm looking for consistency and honestly an answer I believe that they're serious about.
That's smart, and I was going to say, and that answer helps you determine whether you're getting a fair or even a good price on it, right? Because they're ready to move on. It also helps you determine if they're ready to move on, or if they're going to come back in a year and take all those clients back, right? Or for project work or things like that sort of thing.
And we didn't
Go ahead.
I didn't put this in the slide deck about valuations, but I mean, general rule of thumb, I would say, 1 to 3 times cash flow. So, if a business is making $50,000 a year, it's going to be worth between 50 and 150. Where they fall in that range is going to be definitely dependent on their motivation to sell. No one, because these are not cash intensive businesses, it's not usually costing anyone a ton of money to keep it going. And so it's not that hard for them to hang on to it. It's got to be, in my thinking, it's got to be that they want to be getting the time back. They want to get it off their plate, especially around things like hosting and maintenance. A lot of people feel like they're on call all the time. I mean, I know I do, that weighs on people more so over time, that they just want that off my plate. And so you're looking for those kind of things. And again, many of it times to do with they've been in it for a while and they're just tired of it. They want to, move on to the next step and do whatever it is they want to do with their life. So that's what you're looking for.
Yep. And April made a good point in the chat, also saying that value can also be affected by how distressed the book of business is too. So that's
it can,
something to keep
and that's a double-edged sword for you, right? Because if it's distressed to the point where it's bringing the value down, you better have a plan for how you're going to breathe life back into that and not be catching, falling sword here. Again, there's another saying in this whole mergers and acquisitions is, you set the price, I'll set the terms. So I don't have a problem overpaying a little more for something than I would like to if I can have favorable terms. And I'm trying to minimize my cash at risk and push as much of that valuation to me paying you out over time, directly correlated to the revenue that's coming in. Because if you think I'm the right fit for you and you think your clients are rock solid because everyone thinks that, you should have no issue with an earnout, because an earnout can also be an upside for them. They're going to get more valuation if our magic together is going to grow this thing beyond all belief. Push comes to shove, they may not really believe that when they say it, but it has happened. I've had some of these acquisitions where they got more than we predicted because we were able to grow it together. But many of them, it's less because they didn't, one guy's transition was just mailing out a letter. Half the people probably didn't even get it. The next thing you know, they're getting a bill from you and saying, well, who the heck is Windhill? Hey, I'm your new web host. Oh, really? Right. Because we all get these things in the mail.
Right.
So
yeah, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to think about for sure. That's interesting.
Yeah. So you've got to go back and talk to that guy, and so it doesn't really start the rapport in a great setting when it happens like that. So that's the flip side.
Absolutely. One question that came in. So this question is, in looking at a possible company to reach out to, and let's say you're noticing lack of updates on their website and blog, things seem out of date. Does that come into play on value? The question the person who asked is saying that perhaps that they're already done with the business, they're kind of letting it die. How does that factor into the value?
That's very true, and you could definitely look at someone's blog posts or their Facebook posts for their business, and if it seems like they haven't posted in a while, it can be a very direct correlation to the fact that they are starting to take their foot off the gas, checked out, burned out. And again, I don't know that it always speaks to necessarily being a deal, but their motivation factor may be higher, so they certainly may be more receptive to that conversation. So those are good little metrics to look at. If the copyright date in the bottom of the website is 3 years old, that's a telltale sign, I guess, in some cases as well. It's just going to come down to how I like to build rapport. I like to try to build some trust and rapport and get someone liking me before I start having the value conversation. Because my feeling is that if they feel like, hey, this guy could be a great fit, this guy could be solving. We're problem solvers. That's what we're here to do. I'm here to help you and offer you a solution to get to the next step in your journey here, which is getting all of this off of your plate and in a place where you're not going to have to worry about, someone mismanaging these clients, who many of which are in your community, are your perhaps friends, and you don't want to hand them off to someone who's going to do a poor job. So that's what I'm offering you, and I'm going to give you a fair evaluation for it. But I want them to get excited about picturing themselves on the other side of that before we start talking about, oh, geez, I didn't realize that's what it was worth. You try real hard to find comps or metrics to back up your valuation model, and it's really hard because it's so much of this happens under the radar. I try to tell them my experiences of previous acquisitions and how things can go south and where I'm coming from. They may think that they're different, but maybe they'll be have a little empathy with me to say, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Because if they've never bought before, they don't understand. So when you're on the selling side, if you've never acquired, you don't really get the other side of the shoes. I've never sold, so I can't say that I would fully understand that piece of it either. And I also don't know if I would take my own terms, but that's I guess you got to think about that too at sometimes. But
I think it's so interesting. Yeah, I think it's so interesting, Link, that you said at the beginning that you've never been a salesperson, right? You've never been big into sales and organic growth and that sort of thing, and growth by acquisition has just been something that's worked for you. But it's so interesting to hear you talk about it, because you're clearly very, very talented when it comes to this method of growth. And maybe where you lack in your sales skills, you're a great shopper, right? You're a great buyer. So you've definitely got that figured out. It's an interesting kind of nuance to look at here.
And you're right. I mean, people have told me this is sales, right? I mean, you are. Yeah. This is B2B sales in a way. It's just a different conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question I have, and this comes through talking with some folks in our community about growth by acquisition, is that well, I guess it sounds like you maybe focus on local agencies. Maybe not, though. Maybe you've branched out and you don't just focus on local agencies. But what about kind of targeting different locations, different areas, and going way, I mean, even different countries, completely different, and taking that approach to growth by acquisition? Is that something you have tried or know of?
Yeah, so I've only been looking stateside myself, simply because I haven't exhausted the whole country yet. I sort of go state by state, and I've got a VA who builds my list for me. Sort of, we go state by state, and I send out the letters and make my kids stamp and seal these things. And so then you always get a float of phone calls from that, and you have to keep up with it and do your follow up. Again, it's like it is sales in that regard, because sometimes people are not now, but talk to me in a few years. So you should have a system for following up. I have not tried it out of the country to know how that's different. My gut sense is the conversations would probably be similar. Cultural and language barriers aside, I probably would not be the best fit in a country I didn't speak the language and in. But certainly, if someone has that, I mean, this stuff is global. I have found my acquisitions have been sort of in the Northeast, but once I got out of New Hampshire is a very small state, so once I got in a different state, even Connecticut or New York was considered not local. And I've lost clients that I've acquired to local providers because of the weight that local carried. And so even though I could continue to provide them the same services, and this may be, it's going to depend on the service. If you're vertically focused, these were, just general accounts, vertical focused industries or agencies, that probably isn't such a factor, right? So that comes down to your niche and your specialization. Most of these have been really small, very localized ones. So I think that would be a factor no matter what, especially internationally, is the further away you are, the time zone factor. Many of these are just beliefs that people may have, whether they're accurate or not, may not be, but that may impact your ability to hang on to them depending on the service mix.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes complete sense. And it comes down to maybe, how simple it can be and how complicated are you willing to make it and those sorts of things.
Right.
Very interesting. And I know you had a slide where you listed some websites to look at for folks who are selling their agencies. Do you, and I know you said that your approach is the letter writing, but do you still are those websites things you use to find targets
I do. Oh yeah, I watch those. You can set up alerts on most of these and just have them come in. And I find it's a good exercise too to reach out to some, and you may start to make judgment about some and look at it, but when you see an ad for one, obviously a broker has done everything they can to make that look greater than life, and some brokers will, the value may be high, but it may not be realistic. So I'm careful not to pass over it. I may reach out, inquire, sign the NDA, learn a little more about it, and then decide, is it a fit, right? That's the first thing. Is it a fit? And if it's a fit, do you want to keep it on the watch list? So there was one that came up on Biz Buy Sell last week, and I reached out to the broker, brand new to the market. It's in Connecticut. I like it on a lot, but I found some holes in it that just wasn't quite a fit, and it sort of made their valuation seem pretty high. So I didn't feel like I was going to make an offer at this point, and I tried to explain my thought behind it, and because I recognize that someone else may pay that in an instant, and that's fine, let them. But if it stays on the market and the sellers are serious enough about selling, then maybe I could revisit the conversation down the road. Some brokers may be receptive. This guy has yet to even write back to me, so maybe he was turned off by that and thought, geez, I'm crazy, I'm cheap, whatever. But I just, don't think I want to buy these things at the highest price possible. It's also going to depend on how well you are with organic growth, because you may be looking and saying, I'm going to spend this much money or this investment to acquire a company. but I'm really good at organic growth, or I can grow that way. So, maybe your acquisition is to acquire talent to make, because you've got organic growth nailed down, but you need more of a team. And this is a way to acquire a team with some capacity versus hiring, perhaps unproven people. I mean, so that's very different than where I'm at, but it's depending on, again, why are you considering this? Is how you'd answer that question. But I'm sorry,
Yeah.
a long-winded answer to your question. Yes, I still look at.
No, it was great. It was
broker
interesting.
deals.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I wanted to let folks know who are watching that I shared a link to the guest blog that you wrote for us, Link. So it's a really great post up on the GoWP blog. So I shared that link there. And I wanted to also let everyone know that a while back, we hosted a panel discussion on the flip side of this coin, which is selling your agency. So we had a panel discussion a few months ago. I forget exactly when it was now, but I shared the link there. And that was a great discussion also for folks who are looking for information on the other side of this coin. So that's there to check out as well. I don't see any other questions coming in. Here's one more. So when you do make the offer, you mentioned a deposit and added funds at a certain date. Do you take out a business loan for that?
I have used my own personal savings to this point. They were smaller deals, so I have not gone and gotten a loan. Certainly for a larger company, I've looked into that. I'm kind of up to speed with the process. SBA loans are great for small businesses. And I've never been through the process, but for all industries, it's a fairly affordable form of debt that many businesses can use. The bank needs to approve the company and think that it's a company that they can, loan on. It's my understanding that with an SBA loan, you cannot do an earnout. So keep that in mind. You can do a seller note, but it's got to be on what they call standby. So the SBA or the government wants all their money, or the bank, the government just insures it. They want to see that paid off fully. So some sellers may not really want to sit around 10 years to get all their money. So it's a vehicle, it's a tool in the toolbox, and you can certainly go non-SBA. And without going too deep down the rabbit hole, if anyone has home equity, and if you own a home, you probably do in this real estate market, SBA will likely, put a lien or attach your home, as well as have you sign a personal guarantee. So if they're going to do that anyway, you might consider going and getting a home equity line of credit. And if you have good financial personal management skills, they're going to attach anyway. That's an even cheaper form of capital that you can loan to yourself. Again, I've got one. I haven't used it for that, but that was exactly why I have it in sort of on hold. And you can get them, they cost you anything really. So it's just having that. So there's many different ways to finance a business. And for bigger agencies, there's a whole nother topic around rolling them in and merging and shares and all kinds of things. So there's umpteenth ways to get creative when it comes to it. Another reason to do the letter is because many brokers may not want to be as creative with the unique deal structures. So I personally think the less money you can borrow, the better, just as a buyer, but obviously the seller is going to want you to be putting enough on the table that they feel it's worth it. So I personally like going with smaller deals first, because if all these blew up, I did not have a bunch of money that I had to pay back. And I learned a lot so far with the small ones that I think are same lessons that would have held for larger acquisitions, that gave me confidence and learned where some blind spots were. I'm sure there's many more I have yet to find, but I found nibbling at small little deals, some of them can be a headache and take just as much time and effort. But for me, it just fit my comfort zone to start small and then grow from there.
Great, really good question and great answer, Link. Thank you for sharing all that information. It's really helpful. Very cool. Well, we're at an hour. We're at 1:30, so I want to respect everyone's time here. Link, thank you so much for such an informative presentation here. This was really interesting. I think it gives people a lot of things to think about. And it also, the main thing I'm kind of walking away with is how accessible this growth strategy really is. Mergers and acquisitions sounds big and out of reach, but when you look at it like this and see what you're doing, people can do this. This is a viable strategy for growth, and it works. And seeing how you've used it and leveraged it for growing your agency is really cool to see. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Absolutely. You can do this at any level. And I think that's the best takeaway, is that this is not for the big guys, whoever big is. It's an option. It's a growth lever. And when done carefully and right, I think it can definitely be well worth doing.
Absolutely. And for those of you watching who are thinking, God, I'm so tired of running my agency and I want out, then you can probably get in touch with Link and see what he has to say about it.
You never know who knows who, and that's another reason for just putting your feelers out there. Someone may know or hear somebody, and your opportunities may come knocking. So you just never know.
That's right, exactly. And what you have created is valuable. So you don't have to just quit and throw in the towel either. You can
absolutely
sell and move on to the next thing.
Absolutely, you do. Yep. And don't.
Very cool.
I'm sure some people shut the door and walk away, and I just think that's a shame, because you've put a lot of work into it, and you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Link. For those of you who are wanting to catch the recording, or if you're watching this recorded, thank you for joining us today, and thanks for your time. Link, thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone who was able to join us live. I appreciate you all for coming in and livening up the chat. I love to see that. So we will see you all in the GoWP Niche Agency Owners Facebook group, and see you this Friday for our Happiness Hour, which will be live at 3 p.m. Eastern in the Facebook group. So we'll see you all there. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.